The US Navy has a big problem. See this? This is the Jiangyang shipyard, located on an island northeast of Shanghai, and it single-handedly has more capacity to build ships than the entire US naval shipbuilding industry. This should be worrisome, even to those who say, so what, China has more ships, but by total tonnage, the US Navy is still much larger. That is true for now, but consider that currently China has not twice or 10 times, but 350 times the shipbuilding capacity of the United States. They're launching new ships like they're dropping dumplings in a soup. But what was the US Navy's $1.3 trillion mistake that led them to this situation? How is China leveraging its commercial shipbuilding industry to its military advantage? And why, despite China's thriving shipyards, the US Navy still has a massive advantage is not what you think. The growth of the US shipbuilding industry during peacetime has been historically dependent on 4 factors. An existential threat that demands building ships. During the Reagan administration, it was the threat of Soviet Union. Now it's China. A shipbuilding strategy justifying how many ships are required. In the 1980s, it was the 600-ship Navy. Now it's the 381-ship Navy. Support in the form of legislation and funding from Congress. And finally, a private sector to build those ships. And it's this last point that's currently the bottleneck. See, back in the 1970s, American shipyards were building 5% of ocean-going commercial ships worldwide. By 2016, the number of shipyards dropped by more than 80%. And by 2023, the US market share had dropped to just 0.13%. But why? After the end of the Cold War, assuming a large fleet was no longer necessary, the United States cut back on naval spending and modernization. In fact, if you take the Navy's 1989 budget, adjusted for inflation, and compare that to what the Navy has been actually spending between 1989 and 2023, there's more than $1.3 trillion in foregone spending and investment. If actualized, the US shipbuilding industry would have certainly been in a healthier position. But with the Navy being their primary, yet unreliable customer, shipyards couldn't justify making big investments in their infrastructure, training, and workforce. So many closed down, and the workforce shrunk. As a result, between building new ships, maintaining the existing fleet, and decommissioning the older hulls, the US Navy has remained stuck at 290 to 300 battle force ships for the past couple of decades. That's despite the Obama, Trump, and Biden administrations all pushing for a larger fleet. In contrast, the Chinese shipbuilding industry's growth has been explosive. In 1980, only 220,000 deadweight tons of commercial shipping was produced in China. That figure jumped to 13 million tons of new ships in 2006, followed by a whopping 42.32 million tons in 2023. China's global shipbuilding market share has gone from less than 10% in 2000 to almost 65% in 2025. South Korea and Japan's order books together make up about 31%. At its peak, about 1,500 naval architects were graduating from Chinese universities each year. And when considering the students studying overseas, China was already exceeding its competitors in the number of college graduates entering the workforce with shipbuilding-related technical degrees. You might be thinking, so what's the big deal if China can make a lot of commercial vessels? Just because a country can build a lot of oil tankers and container ships doesn't mean they can produce military-grade vessels like aircraft carriers and submarines, right? Well, I've got some news for you.
Because in China, the law says that all commercial vessels have to meet military standards. If you are building a roll-on, roll-off passenger ferry for transporting people and cars, you have to have deck plate supports that are strong enough to transport tanks and armored vehicles on.
That was Palmer Luckey, the founder of defense company Anduril Industries, and he's 100% correct. According to China's 2016 National Defense Transportation Act, new Chinese ships are built to national defense standards. This law applies to 5 categories of vessels: container ships, bulk carriers, break bulk ships, ro-ro ferries, and multi-purpose vessels. The Chinese government then uses its civil-military fusion policy to exercise political control over their commercial vessels and employs them routinely in military exercises. This is already happening. Passenger ferries are typically used to transport people and cars, but in China, they have also been used to transport tanks and other equipment during military exercises.
They are requiring even their civilian vessels to all be military standards compliant because they foresee a world where they're going to nationalize their entire domestic fleet and use it in a whole of China fight against the West.
This approach dangerously erodes the principle of distinction that is central to the law of armed conflict. Blurring the line between civilian and combatant ships would confuse what vessel is a legitimate military target. It makes you wonder, what if the Chinese government one day decides to put missiles inside disguised containers on commercial ships that every day pass right by the Norfolk Naval Shipyard, where aircraft carriers and other military ships are docked? In 2022, China's largest missile manufacturer exhibited a 30-foot containerized missile system, which could simply be placed on any ship. So they already have the technology to pull such tricks. I should note that when it comes to firepower, China's total VLS cells among their surface combatants have also been rapidly increasing. In case you're not familiar, a vertical launch system, or VLS, is essentially made up of launch tubes built into a ship's hull. This not only reduces the ship's radar cross-section, but it also enables rapid and nearly simultaneous launch of a variety of missiles, all from these compact cells. Having the largest shipbuilding industry in the world has other benefits too. Advancements in hull construction, modular manufacturing, increased shipyard capacity, and other areas in commercial shipbuilding are feeding directly into China's naval expansion efforts. In addition, warships are now incorporating some of the commercially available computer processors and networks, bridge control, and other commercial off-the-shelf technology to control costs and facilitate more frequent technology upgrades. Remember the Jiangyang shipyard that we mentioned at the beginning of the video? Satellite images clearly show that this shipyard has been building both commercial and multiple military vessels at the same time. In fact, China has already domestically designed and built 2 aircraft carriers. Plus, the February 2025 satellite images from the Dalian shipyard showed the Type 004 aircraft carrier, which is rumored to have nuclear propulsion and electromagnetic catapults, similar to America's latest supercarriers. Of course, China has very little experience in naval aviation when you compare them to the United States, which started operating aircraft carriers over 100 years ago. Plus, there is one area where China has a lot of catching up to do. Submarine capabilities remain an area of unquestioned US dominance, with over 66 nuclear submarines that have a combined 1,168 VLS cells. China is believed to be 10 to 20 years behind on their submarine technology. That said, in 2023, they launched 3 nuclear-powered attack submarines. They launched another 3 the year after in 2024. The US Navy, in comparison, has a goal of producing 2 attack submarines per year by 2028. A serious blow to China's underwater force came after its newest state-of-the-art nuclear submarine sank in 2024 while at the dock. The Chinese officials kept it under the rug, but satellite images showed a number of barge cranes at the site where the submarine had been last moored. The last time an American nuclear submarine sank pierside during construction was USS Guitarro in 1969. According to the US Navy's 30-year plan, the number of battle force ships would increase from 295 today to 381 in 2054. I will certainly be retired by then. To accomplish this, over the next 30 years, the Navy will be buying 364 ships, while decommissioning over 270 ships. In fact, before increasing, the fleet would become even smaller, falling to 283 ships in 2027. Interestingly, the net increase would be in the number of small surface combatants, mine countermeasure ships, and small amphibious warships, not submarines, aircraft carriers, or destroyers. In contrast, China's Navy currently has a fleet of 401 ships, which is expected to grow to 435 by 2030. I would certainly still be working by then. China hasn't openly published a 30-year plan, but rest assured, they will be building more ships. Only time will tell if the US Navy's budget increase from $255 billion in 2024 to a figure close to $330 billion in 2053 would keep them ahead of the game over the next 30 years. But one thing is for sure. American shipyards would need to produce substantially more naval tonnage than they've been producing over the past decade. Hey there, we are hiring. If you think you're a scriptwriter who can match our caliber of research, or if you're a video editor who can source quality footage like we do, we're looking for you. Click the link below to apply and become part of Not What You Think.